Please welcome a woman on a lot of people's VP wish list, founder of Fair Fight Action and author of the new book, Our Time Is Now, Stacey Abrams. Welcome back to The View. What the hell happened in Georgia? This was insane. It was beyond a meltdown. You know, people waited in line for over 6 hours to cast their ballots, and the machines were broken, and polling sites were understaffed. What happened? They must have known it was going to be a problem.
The Secretary of State showed a deliberate indifference to the needs of Georgia voters. He refused to exercise his responsibility to oversee our elections. In fact, he has said that he had no responsibility for what went wrong, that it wasn't his fault that he paid for $107 million worth of machinery that he didn't train people adequately to use. Instead, he used $400,000 to pay for an ad celebrating himself for buying the machines, which could have paid for 1,600 additional poll workers making $20 an hour, which could have sped those lines up. He could have done the work that Kathy Cox, the Democratic Secretary of State, did back in 2002 when she bought new machines, which was make sure that every person was trained, that they had extra staff on hand, more than 100 Secretary of State members working to help make sure those machines worked, sending mailed instructions to every single voter. Unfortunately, he thought that you just turn the key and it would do its own, it would run itself. But why do we need a Secretary of State except to have leaders who do their jobs?
So Stacey, Georgia was one of the first states to send out absentee ballot applications to all registered voters because of the coronavirus. And that was good. That's a move Democrats have been pushing for across the country for a while. Why didn't it prevent the chaos? And also, part B of my question is, what happened to you in this whole process?
So we actually Democrats worked with Republicans, worked with the Republican Secretary of State to send out applications for absentee ballots to all active registered voters. So let's be clear, anyone who's newly registered did not get an application. But the problem started the day after the agreement happened, which was that they gave the process to a vendor in Arizona. With all due respect to great Arizonans, they gave the process to a third-party vendor who could not deliver on time. For example, when I got my absentee ballot, the envelope, I filled it out, did both pages, and when I got ready to stick it in the envelope was sealed shut. I could not call and get an extra envelope, and we tried. We tried to call a lot of folks to figure this out, but instead, I had to physically go and vote in person on Election Day. But we have thousands of Georgians who never received their ballots. And this is why we need the HEROES Act. The HEROES Act is designed to respond to what's going to happen across the country, which is that even if you have the right intentions, if you don't have the resources to scale it up and ensure that the processes work properly and that you have time to fix what's broken, then we will not have the kind of election we deserve in the United States in November.
Hello, Ms. Abrams, it's Megan. I just want a little bit of clarity, if it's okay. There's a lot of finger pointing going on, and you seem to be implying that it was Georgia's Secretary of State that was targeting communities of color, but most of the counties that had issues this week were run by Democrats. Do you think we should be quick to blame Republicans when most of the problems, like consolidated polling locations and older poll workers canceling over health concerns, were a result of the coronavirus?
So I want to decouple a few things. Number one, in the state of Georgia, the Secretary of State is the election superintendent. It is in the Constitution that it is his responsibility to direct, to train, and to oversee the conduct of our elections. We allow counties to do the direct implementation, but it's the responsibility of the Secretary of State to make certain they know how to do it and they have the resources to get it done, and that if there are problems, the Secretary of State's office should have the resources and the responsibility to hold them accountable. Number two, it is a false narrative that the Secretary of State has pushed out that this was only happening because of Democratic leadership. Our two most populous counties, Fulton and Gwinnett. Fulton is run by Democrats. Gwinnett is run by Republicans. And in both counties, we had to get judicial orders to extend the time for using those for being able to vote. But let's also be clear that where the Speaker of the House lives, in the area that he represents, we had Republican counties that also had challenges because the machines were inoperable. These were mistakes that were rife throughout the state of Georgia. And while the longest lines and the largest headlines focused on the metro Atlanta area, this affected every single part of our state. And the reality is your access to democracy shouldn't depend on your county of residence. We know that this was also a challenge faced in South Carolina and in Nevada, but Georgia's collapse and disaster was so large that it's overshadowed everyone. But fundamentally, we deserve to have elections that work for everyone. And yes, I believe that we saw a combination of malfeasance, which is the continuation of the voter suppression that Brad Rassenberger inherited from Brian Kemp, but also incompetence. And if we don't solve both of those problems, we are going to have a national breakdown of our elections come November.